Call center night shift. I used to work a seasonal job in a call center. It was only for a few months during the holidays, but I will never forget what happened to me during that time. The company was small, but they had rented a strange building for their headquarters. It was an old hospital that had been renovated into an office. They turned patient rooms into meeting rooms and installed cubicles in what used to be large hospital wings. It was odd, but cheap rent, I guess. I didn't think much about it at first. During the day, the place felt busy and alive. People were always on the phones, typing, walking around with coffee. There was laughter, meetings, and the constant ringing of calls. It felt normal. But after dark, everything changed. Because I was hired as a seasonal junior manager, I worked the night shift. Most people were upstairs on the second floor where the night call center agents worked, but I stayed on the first floor with the administrative offices. I had to check things, shut down computers, and lock up before going home. The first floor was always quiet at night, too quiet. There were long, dark hallways with old floors that creaked. The air always felt cold, even if the heat was on. The silence was heavy, almost like the building was holding its breath. One night, close to the end of my shift, something strange happened. It was around 1:30 in the morning. I had just finished checking all the computers in the IT room and was walking through the main hallway to get to the exit. The hallway was dimly lit, and only the emergency lights were on because the motion sensors hadn't picked up movement in a while. The quiet was so deep, I could hear my own breathing and footsteps echo off the walls. As I turned the corner near the break room, I heard it. A loud crashing noise from the other side of the floor. It sounded like something heavy had fallen, maybe a desk or a chair. I froze. I knew I was the only person on the first floor. Everyone else was working upstairs, and no one could come down without a key card. I slowly walked toward the source of the noise, my heart pounding in my chest. As I reached the large open area where the HR and accounting cubicles were set up, something terrifying happened. All the lights on that entire floor suddenly turned on. Every single one. These lights were on motion sensors. They only turn on when someone walks by. Usually, if I enter a room, a few lights turn on ahead of me, not all at once. But now they all lit up in a blink, like someone, or many people, had just walked through the whole space. I stopped moving. I stared at the rows of empty cubicles. Nothing. No sound. No movement. Just lights. The silence felt wrong. I waited, holding my breath, listening for any sound, breathing, footsteps, whispering. But there was nothing. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I slowly backed away. I didn't even want to turn my back to the room, so I walked backward, keeping my eyes on the lit-up space. When I got to the hallway again, I turned and walked quickly toward the exit. I didn't run. I didn't want to look afraid. Somehow, it felt like something was watching. When I got to the break room to grab my bag, I heard it again. The crash, but this time closer. My hand was shaking as I grabbed the handle of my backpack. I didn't even put my jacket on. I walked to the elevator, hit the button, and waited. Ding. The door opened, but it was empty. Still, I felt like something had just been inside. The air was cold, and the light flickered for a moment. I stepped in and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, I looked at the hallway outside. And I swear to you, just before the door shut, I saw movement at the end of the hallway. Something dark and fast, like a shadow slipping behind a wall. I didn't go back after that night. I told my supervisor I quit. I made up a reason about school or needing a day job. I didn't tell them what I really saw, what I really felt. I don't know if they would believe me, but I believe myself. A few weeks later, I met someone who had worked there years ago. When I mentioned the building, their face changed. "You worked at the old hospital?" they asked. "Yeah," I said. "It's a call center now." They nodded slowly. "You know that place is haunted, right?" I laughed a little, trying to sound calm. "Haunted? Seriously?" They didn't laugh. There was a fire there in the 80s. A part of the hospital shut down because patients died. They rebuilt, but people say their spirits never left. I didn't ask any more questions. I didn't want to know more. I didn't want to hear about the patients who might still wander those hallways. I didn't want to know if someone or something had followed me that night. Even now, when I think about it, I feel cold. That building was never meant to be an office. It had too much history, too much pain. The walls had seen too much, heard too much, and maybe at night, when it was quiet and dark, that pain woke up. I have a new job now. It's in a regular office in a new building with windows and sunlight. I work during the day, and I go home before dark. But sometimes, when I'm alone at my desk, late in the evening, and the lights flicker just for a moment, I remember that night, and I hope, really hope, that whatever was in that building stayed there, because I never want to see it again. I work in a 24-hour security center. It's an old building, really old. The kind of place with creaky pipes, flickering lights, and thick, dusty air that never feels fresh, no matter how often the windows are opened. The place used to be something else long ago, maybe a hospital or a government office. No one really knows. Now it's where we monitor cameras, handle building alarms, and sit in silence during the graveyard shift. At night, this place changes. It gets quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet where every footstep echoes like thunder. The kind of quiet where you start to hear things that don't make sense. The kind of quiet that crawls into your bones and stays there. Every security guard who works the night shift says the same thing. The toilets are different. Not just a little creepy. Not just old building creepy. Something is wrong with them. It's like walking into another world when you go in there at night. The lights buzz louder than anywhere else in the building. The air is colder. Much colder. Colder than it should be, even in winter. Some people say it smells like damp earth or mold. Others say they smell bleach, but no one ever cleans the toilets at night. There's no janitor on night shift. The weirdest part? The taps. No matter what time you go in, no matter how many times you check, the taps always turn on by themselves while you're in the cubicle. Always. The first time I noticed it, I thought someone else had walked in. I was in the third stall, doing my business, when I heard the metal clink of the tap handles turning. Water started running. Just one tap, then the other. I sat there, waiting to hear footsteps or the hand dryer. Nothing. I finished up and opened the stall door slowly. The sinks were empty, no one was there, but both taps were on full blast. I checked under the stalls, all empty. I turned off the taps, feeling uneasy. I mentioned it to Craig, the guy who trained me. He just shook his head and said, "They do that, especially at night. Don't worry too much. Just don't spend too long in there." I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking, but he wasn't. A few weeks later, I was working alone on the 2 a.m. shift. Everyone else had gone home. I drank too much coffee and had to use the bathroom. I really didn't want to, but I didn't have a choice. The hallway to the toilets was darker than usual. One of the lights above was flickering, throwing fast shadows along the walls. It made me feel dizzy, but I kept walking. When I pushed the bathroom door open, the cold hit me like a slap. It felt like I'd stepped into a freezer. My breath made little clouds in the air. That wasn't right. The rest of the building was warm. Still, I walked in, trying to ignore the feeling. I checked the taps first. Both were dry and tight. I even pulled on them to be sure. No drips, no movement, just silence. I stepped into the last stall, the one closest to the wall. The second I closed the stall door, it started. Click, clack, tap. Something was tapping on the floor. Not footsteps, not pipes, just slow, strange tapping, like someone gently drumming their fingers on the tile. Then came the knock. 3 knocks. Soft, but clear. Not on the stall door, on the wall behind it. I froze. My heart started racing. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I listened. Nothing else happened. I waited for a full minute before I dared to open the door. When I did, the taps were running. Full blast. Both of them. I backed out of the bathroom without turning them off. I told myself I must have imagined the knock. That maybe the pipes were acting up again. But I knew that wasn't true. The next day, I talked to another guard, Tanya. She had been working the night shift for almost a year. When I asked her if she had any weird experiences in the bathroom, she went pale. She told me a story. One night, a few months ago, she had gone into the bathroom and found the floor soaked with water. The taps were both on, water spilling over the edge of the sink, like someone had plugged the drain and left them running for hours. But the weird part was the message written on the mirror. She said it looked like it had been drawn with a finger in the steam, but there was no steam. It just said one word: stay. She wiped it off, thinking it was a prank. But when she looked up again, it was still there, clearer than before. She ran. When she went back with another guard 10 minutes later, it was gone. No message, no water on the floor, nothing. Since then, she never goes to the bathroom alone. Another night, I decided to test it. I took a flashlight and went in around 3 a.m. I checked every corner, every stall. I turned the taps on and off to make sure they worked. I even brought a small camera and set it facing the sinks just in case. Then I sat in the middle stall and waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Nothing. Just when I thought it was all nonsense, I heard it. The faintest sound of a child crying. It wasn't loud, it was soft, like it was far away. But it was definitely a child. And it was coming from inside the bathroom. I stood up fast, opened the door. The crying stopped. The bathroom was still empty, and the taps running again. I grabbed my camera and got out fast. When I checked the footage later, I saw something that made my stomach twist. At exactly 3:12 a.m., the taps turned on their own. No one was there. The camera didn't glitch. Nothing moved the handle. But both taps went from off to full stream in less than a second. And just before that happened, for a split second, the mirror fogged up. No message, just fog. After that, I started asking around more. Everyone had a story. Little things. The door creaking open when no one was around. Whispering near the stalls. Cold hands brushing past them when they were washing up. No one knew why. No one could explain it. Some said a worker died in there years ago, locked in by accident and forgotten. Others believed the building was cursed, but most of us agreed on one thing. It wasn't just old pipes or our imagination. Something was in that bathroom, and it didn't like being ignored. My last shift, before I took time off, something happened that made me swear never to go in there again. It was a stormy night. Rain was pounding the windows and thunder shook the building. The power flickered and the cameras glitched out for a few seconds. I went to check the server room. On the way back, I passed the bathroom. The door was open. Not wide open, just a crack. But the light inside was off. Completely dark. And then I heard it. Breathing. Loud, raspy breathing. Like someone was standing right behind the door. I froze. My flashlight was in my bag down the hall. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. Then the breathing stopped, and the door slammed shut. Just like that. No wind. No draft. It slammed like someone had kicked it. I backed away slowly, turned, and walked as fast as I could to the security room. I didn't check the cameras. I didn't go near that hallway again for the rest of the night. The next morning, when the day staff arrived, I told my supervisor I wanted to switch shifts. I didn't care if it meant less pay. I just didn't want to be there at night anymore. He looked at me for a moment, then nodded. "You're not the first," he said. "You won't be the last." People still work the night shift. The cameras still need monitoring. But no one uses the bathroom alone after dark. And the taps? They still run by themselves. Every single night. Even when no one is inside. Even when the door is locked. Some things can't be explained. Some places are just wrong. And some stories, they're true. The man in the hallway. I used to work at a small cafe inside an old hotel. This was before the pandemic hit, when life was still normal. The cafe was cozy, with a warm smell of fresh coffee and baked goods filling the air. The hotel had been around for decades, maybe even longer. Some guests said it had charm. Others said it felt old and tired. But I never thought much about that. I didn't believe in ghosts or any of that spooky stuff. Still don't, really. But something happened one afternoon that I still can't explain. The cafe had two main areas, the front of house where the customers sat, and the back of house, which was the kitchen. There was a hallway beside the kitchen entrance. That hallway led to the bathrooms and also wrapped around toward the hotel's front desk. It was a quiet afternoon with very few customers. Days like that made the shift feel longer, but they also gave us a chance to relax a little. I walked into the kitchen to talk with the staff. I stood in the doorway, half inside the kitchen and half in the hallway. I didn't plan on staying long, just a quick chat. While I leaned there, I kept glancing at the dining room, just in case someone needed something. My attention moved back and forth, one ear in the conversation, one eye on the cafe floor. Then I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. It wasn't dramatic or loud, just a figure walking past me in the hallway. My head turned naturally, almost like muscle memory, to follow the movement. A man was walking down the hallway, past the kitchen and toward the bathrooms, or maybe the hotel front desk. I didn't think anything strange about it at first, just a guest or maybe someone from the hotel side. But something felt off. Not in a scary way, just off. My focus returned to the kitchen for a second, then flicked right back to the hallway. I don't know why I looked again so quickly. It was almost automatic, like something in me knew something wasn't right. The hallway was empty. there was no one walking down it. I stared for a few seconds, waiting to hear the sound of a bathroom door slowly closing. They all had hydraulic arms on them, so you'd always hear a soft hiss and click when someone went inside. But I heard nothing. I saw nothing. The man had just vanished. At first, I told myself maybe he was just really fast. Maybe he turned the corner and headed toward the front desk before I looked again. But the timing didn't make sense. There was no way anyone could have walked that distance so fast and quietly without me noticing. And it's not like the hallway was that long. There weren't any other doors he could have gone into except the bathrooms. I stepped into the hallway and walked down it. I turned the corner. The hotel lobby was empty. I opened both bathroom doors one by one. Both were empty too. No sound, no signs of anyone being there. I stood there for a minute, confused. I tried to think of every logical explanation. Maybe I imagined it? But no. I remembered the man so clearly. He was tall, maybe in his 50s. He wore a light brown coat and dark pants. He had a slow, steady walk, like someone deep in thought. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could picture his posture, the way his arms swung slightly as he walked. It was so clear in my mind, like a memory. But it didn't feel like a regular memory. It felt strange, almost like I had remembered something while it was happening, not after. I didn't know how to explain that to myself. I still don't. The rest of the shift went by slowly. I kept checking the hallway and the lobby, half expecting to see the man again. But I never did. When my shift ended, I told one of the cooks about it. He laughed and said the place was probably haunted. I laughed too, but inside I didn't feel like it was funny. I wasn't scared, exactly, just uneasy. Over the next few weeks, I started to notice other little things. Nothing dramatic, just strange feelings. Sometimes, I'd feel like someone was watching me when I walked through the hallway alone. Other times, I'd hear faint footsteps when no one else was around. I didn't say anything to anyone. I didn't want to sound crazy. I told myself I was just imagining things, thinking too much about that one afternoon. But then one night, something happened that shook me even more. It was a closing shift. I was the last one there, finishing up cleaning and locking things up. The kitchen staff had already left. I was wiping down the tables in the dining area when I heard the soft sound of footsteps coming from the hallway. I froze. I turned toward the hallway, waiting to see someone come around the corner. Nothing. The footsteps stopped. I slowly walked toward the hallway. The lights were on. Everything looked normal. I checked the bathrooms again. Empty. I checked the lobby. Still empty. As I turned to go back, I felt a rush of cold air pass behind me, like someone had walked right past me. I spun around. No one there. That night, I locked up as fast as I could and left. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone in that building. After that night, I asked a longtime hotel employee if she'd ever seen anything strange. She looked at me for a moment, then said, "You saw the man in the coat, didn't you?" I was stunned. She told me that years ago, before the cafe opened, an older man had passed away in one of the hotel rooms. No one knew much about him. He had checked in alone and died quietly in his sleep. Staff said he wore the same kind of coat I had described. Since then, a few people had said they'd seen a man walking the halls, especially near the bathrooms and the front desk. He never spoke. He never interacted with anyone. He just walked. They called him the quiet guest. After hearing that, I didn't feel so crazy. But I didn't feel any better either. I kept working there for a while longer, but I always felt different after that. I never saw the man again, not the way I did that day. But sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I think I saw movement in the hallway. I stopped checking after a while. I didn't want to know. Eventually, the pandemic hit and the cafe closed. I never went back. Part of me wants to believe it was just stress or a trick of the light, but deep down, I know what I saw. It wasn't a shadow, it wasn't my imagination. It was a man, and he didn't belong there, or maybe he did.
If you like the video, please give it a like, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.